Right.
Okay, here we are, whānau, and Rade is going to talk to us about our strategic focus area number 3, which is our native nursery, Rade.
Kia ora. We have selected a site up at Hino Road, and we have already obtained 2 containers, and we've also got a small digger and a tractor and 2 water tanks. So we've got someone presently getting the groundwork prepared for our,
For the site, right?
yes, for the site.
Yep, for the nursery site.
Yes.
Yep.
We have big plans ahead of us. We would like to, one of our plans is to go out into the bush, our native bush, and start collecting our own seeds from our native trees out there.
I think you bought some kahika tear seeds here tonight that you've been collecting.
Yes.
That's okay.
I don't know where I put them.
Yep, that's fine.
But anyway, the kahika tear trees are the tallest trees in the bush, and they are beautiful, what do you call them, seeds that the cuckoo and all that eat. So they're very important for us to grow our own trees. And also the other thing we are going to be doing, we are hoping to get heritage seeds from around the valley. And you know, all the old homesteads that we had their own PTT, they had their own plums, they had pears, etc., etc. We would like to get that going again, so that we have our own trees for our, you know, kept in the valley, and you know that our tupuna had, and plus so that our mokopuna will enjoy the benefits in the future. What else? I think Dylan has covered a bit of it before.
Well, one of the native nursery, of course, is a key part of all of the tree growing things that we want to do.
Yes.
And of course, as Rade has just said, is it makes sense that where we have such an available and abundant stock to be able to eco-source our own seeds from our own trees, so that we know they're healthy. We know they can grow in our environment, because there they are growing in our ngahere. So the native nursery is a no-brainer to us, in terms of we need to gather the seeds, propagate the plants, grow them to a point where they can then be planted wherever they need to go. And a lot of those plantings, of course, we will be growing in the nursery for our own use. So for our own use in the riparian work we want to do, in the wetlands work we want to do, and in replanting, as you've said, in being able to gift whānau trees that were the heritage fruit that you fellas grew up with in the valley, right?
Yes. And I find that totara tree is one of the most abundant tree around Pukekohe.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's also one of the crops, one of the tree species for us to have a look at, to potentially plant into a lot of those areas where we're going to remove pest plants from. A lot of people have talked about tōtara and the future value. I think even the Ngāti Forestry is talking about growing tōtara as well. So the native nursery is the first business that we are looking to get funded through our 1BT application. And we expect that we would have 8 people working in the nursery there. And in the first year, so the whole idea of the nursery is that every business is going to have to be self-sustaining in making its own money. We're not going to be dependent on government funding for the businesses that we want to do on the block. So while we initially are getting government funding to get the business set up and get it operational, it needs to be paying for itself within the first couple of years. So the whole idea, the business case for the native nursery, of course, is that the Kaipara catchment, which we've talked about, will probably need about 63 million trees for the water improvement work and retirement of land to improve the whenua and the waterway. So 63 million trees is a lot of trees, and if we can get a good portion of that So that would mean that we would need to start our native nursery in year 1. We might want to start off and be aiming for 100,000. By year 2, we'd want to triple that. So of course there's a lot of space that we need to do that. We need to hit the ground running to learn how to do that. But we're fortunate that we've been to a couple of nurseries already. Do you recall the one we went to see down at Mangawhai?
Yes, we did.
Right. So that's a native nursery that has actually supplied trees that we've actually planted ourselves in Pipiwai. Those are the ones that we planted at Moores Road last year. And they will also be the source of the trees that we plant this year down there.
They started off small.
Exactly.
And then they just built it up, and it was a very good program that they had.
So they have 6 kaimahi down there, and they are easily supplying over 100,000 trees each planting season.
And most of them were all our own whānau down there.
Well, some of them were, that's right. That's right. So we would be looking at having a similar number of people working in the nursery. So we would be looking for a similar value of being able to get 200,000-300,000 plants to sell, so that would become the self-sustaining source of revenue to keep the native nursery going. And then the other part of the work that we do on the trust, of course, is the social enterprise work.
Yes.
And what social enterprise means simply is that it's part of our contribution back to whānau, back to our shareholders, and back to the community. That's social enterprise is what we've always done as Māori, is to look after each other, look after our communities and our whānau and our hapu. So that's what the native nursery work is. And again, that's another page that you'll see on the AGM report, and I put it on there tonight, and you can have a look at that and see in more detail of what that is.
And I'm sure there's a lot of orchards around, Ngāti Hine that have the heritage.
Absolutely.
Fruit. And if you want to donate,
those seeds,
and we can,
or if you've got them growing at home in a pot,
and we'll plant them, and you will eventually benefit from it as well.
Exactly. Thank you, Duddy. We have 2 other key focus areas. So that was key focus area number 3. And number 4, as you will see, it's behind me and up on our AGM report. Number 4 is kaitiakitanga. We've already talked a little bit about that, but this is one that isn't self-generating an income. It is one that will require funding from other sources, like from the native nursery, from pest control, and perhaps from some of those other businesses to chip in little bits to keep it going, because the kaitiakitanga part of the work we want to do, of course, the things that we've talked about, things about cleaning up our waterways, about tidying up our whenua, and being able to care for the tuna and all the other fish in the awa, to take care of habitat and make sure the water is clean. This last summer, of course, has been a real a big eye-opener for us in the long drought, the very hot summer, and we've had lots of whānau who've actually run out of water, run out of drinking water, run out of household water, right? And so if our creeks are clean enough, they should be able to pump to get household water.
Yeah.
At the moment, you probably wouldn't be drinking that water that's full of algae, for example.
Yeah. And there's cows going through some of our streams.
And lots of stock also going through the water. So you risk E. coli and that kind of contamination. So our kaitiakitanga is all about cleaning up those waterways, fencing those waterways so stock can't get in there, making sure that we have replaced and removed all of those bad pest trees like crack willow and replaced them with good native trees and native plants, be that harakeke, tikoko, which is cabbage trees, of course, kahikatea, all of those kinds of trees, to replace those back onto the whenua. So kaitiakitanga is all about looking after our flora, which is all of the plants, our fauna, which is all of the animals and the birds. So that's what we want to do. You will, of course, or might remember that last year, pretty soon, the kiwi start looking for a mate,
Yes.
and then they start nesting. So very soon is the kiwi calling and kiwi counting time.
What I've noticed on our farm lately is a lot of pukeko,
Right.
and they never used to. I don't know whether they're looking for food or...
Well, of course, there's a lot more animals and birds which are coming in closer to homes because there's so little water.
Yes, yes.
So they're coming in search of water, they're coming in search of food, and the same for kiwi. But so kiwi are a key part of our kaitiakitanga, as we've talked about before on Facebook. We have been taking the kids from Te Horo School on excursions to different areas in Purua where there are kiwi sanctuaries and kiwi reserves actually. There's a number of Pākehā farmer out in Purua who look after the kiwi, and they've set aside parts in their farm specifically for kiwi. But one thing that's important to know is that all of the kiwi that have been repatriated, and there are thousands now, have been repatriated from Bream Bay all the way up to north of Whangarei, have all come from Purua. So they're all Ngāti Hine birds. It's really important. So we want to be able to provide a corridor where kiwi can safely march all the way up to Waitangi if they wanted to, without fear of predation or anything like that. So for that to happen, we need to make sure that we get rid of all of these pests that are threatening kiwi eggs and kiwi young. We need to be able to get rid of the possums, the ferrets, the stoats, the wild cats, even the wild cattle. All of those things are a threat. So this is what we want to do in our kaitiaki work. Of course, we are working with Ngā Kaitiaki o Ngā Wai Māori. We are doing water monitoring and tuna surveying with them, as you may have seen on our Facebook page.
Didn't you name 2 kiwis?
We did last year. We were given the opportunity to name 2 kiwi that were released last year, and we named one of them Te Orewai, and the other one is Moeahu. And every month we get reports on Moeahu.
Has she had an egg yet?
Well, they only actually put transmitters on the males.
Oh,
and they only do that because it's the males that sit on the egg.
Yes.
The females, of course, the kiwi is exceptional in that the size egg that a kiwi hatches is almost the size of the female kiwi's body. So she's completely exhausted by the time she hatches an egg of that size. It's taken all of the energy and nourishment out of her. So that's why the male kiwi then sits on the egg for some 80 days.
Is Te Orewai a male or female?
No, Te Orewai's transmitter was removed because Te Orewai was found to be a female, and the way that they know it's a female is because her beak grew beyond 26 centimetres. Once it got beyond 26 centimetres, they know that that's a female. So the female is the larger bird, and the male is the smaller bird.
Well, let's hope Te Orewai
finds a mate. Well, we are seeing, because I get these monthly reports about Moeahu, who's out at Reorewa, and he's very active, as he should be. He should be very active looking for a mate.
Looking for a girlfriend.
And very soon we'll see how his transmitter actually tells us whether or not he's a nesting bird. So if he's found a mate, and if he's a nesting bird, then he will be sitting for long periods, incubating the egg and only going for short spurts to find food. Yeah. So that's Te Orewai and Moeahu.
Life, really, isn't it?
Well, there's lots of predators out there that threaten their life, absolutely. Yes. They should be able to live to 80 years, I understand, but they're not. They don't live that long because the biggest threat to kiwis is actually domestic dogs. Domestic dogs kill kiwi. They don't eat them. They just kill them because they have such a strong scent. They will hunt them, and when they grab them, of course, the kiwi doesn't have a bone that protects its organs. And so once the dog actually grabs it with its jaws, that's enough to kill it. That's enough to kill it. Similarly, if we found a kiwi and went to grab it, it's quite possible that you would hurt it critically, by grabbing it
Yeah.
very strongly. So that's kiwis. They're very fragile. They're very fragile in terms of they don't have bones across their chest to protect them. So that's part of the kaitiakitanga work that we are looking to revigorate
Yeah.
in Te Orewai.
Oh, with kiwi and all that too.
All sorts of things,
Yeah.
things that we found. Well, one of the things that was interesting, of course, is that when we had our wānanga last year, a couple of people came and said to us that they have lived memories and recall seeing tuatara up in the bush in Epeha. Now, wow, that's pretty amazing, because all the scientists tell us here that there are no tuatara on the mainland. They only live on islands that have been populated by tuatara. And we're like, well, how do you know that about Epeha? You haven't come to Epeha, so how do you know?
Yeah.
So those are questions for us. Those are questions for us in terms of our kaitiakitanga and just what the taonga species are that are there. So we would like to survey Epeha, behind Manawatopu,
and
Kaiko,
behind Manukorohi there too.
and behind Manukorohi, for example, to just be clearer about what the species are that are there.
Yeah.
So again, we're starting it, but we intend to roll it out and expand it, and hopefully engage whānau to be kaitiaki in the same way you used to be when you were kids, and your mum and dad and karani papa and those people were kaitiaki in their own right, looking after the ngahere, looking after the awa to make sure it's clean and it can provide healthy kai for whānau. So those are the things that we want to be able to do with that. Our last strategic focus area is the ecocultural tourism. And what does that mean? Well, ecocultural tourism is something where the eco bit is all about our beautiful landscape and our beautiful forest and diversity, trees, fish, all of those things. So that's the eco bit. The cultural bit, of course, is because we are iwi Māori, we are tangata whenua. So that's the cultural bit, and then the tourism, of course. So what we're looking for is we are going to create tracks and trails through the bush for trapping lines to trap the pests, possums, all of those. And then we want to use those tracks and trails to be able to make them ecocultural tourism trails, so that you can go through the bush, you can enjoy the bush, as you do often. You like to go walking in the bush.
Yeah.
And there are lots of other people who would like to. Well, lots of other people would pay for the privilege of being able to walk through our beautiful ngahere, to hear the birds, see the beautiful native trees, indigenous biodiversity that we have there. So we think we could be like lots of other places, is to build tiny huts out there at Manukorohi. We'll start there. Be able to maybe have guided tours to take people through our ngahere to identify different trees and plants, even ones that are used for rongo, for example, like what you do, Dari. So be able to guide people around so that they can see our unique landscapes, hear our stories about these are places. Manukorohi, of course, is a track that was used to get over to Mangakahia, that we have whakapapa relationships to people across there. So be able to tell those kinds of stories and be able to, there's so many different levels of ecocultural tourism being interesting to so many different people.
Yeah.
So we believe that whānau could set up small businesses to look after, to service paying customers who come in. So it might be whether you are providing the breakfast and dinners or a packed lunch or something for people who are coming to stay at Manukorohi, or guided tours to take people through places, tell them our stories. We've even thought perhaps, I wonder if people might come to hear our Te Orewai story of our connection to Hine Amaru when her family first came and settled in Kaiko, and that's our part of the story, but you can go to other parts of Ngāti Hine to link it up and connect the story of how Hine Amaru eventually settled and became the tupuna to all of us here in Ngāti Hine. So there's lots of different stories, and there's opportunities this is about adding value to the work that we've done in the
Yeah.
pest control work.
Yeah.
So the pest control work comes first. Then we add value to that by the introduction of ecocultural tourism and for whānau to be able to have whānau-based and whānau-generated business. And that the Trust will support them to do that, whether
Even
it's...
climbing up Manikorohi is it's not quite easy either.
It's not easy, but
No.
you can certainly see
But it's
way
lovely.
out to the
Yeah.
west, right? You can
Yeah.
just about see down to the harbour,
Yep.
down the Whangarei Harbour from there, and you can certainly see to Tutamwai and over towards the west. So there are lots of beautiful landscapes that paying customers might be interested in paying to see. There's also there's a brand of tourist who's a volunteer eco-warrior. So they pay to come and work in different places. So they might come and help pay to work in pest control, setting possum traps, those kinds of things. They might come and help to set up tracks and pathways, clearings, fencing, all those kinds of things.
Is it like those woofers? What are they called?
Exactly,
Yeah.
woofers, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you provide them with food.
That's right. So we have to provide them a place to sleep and stay for the time they're here and feed them. And I mean, those are the kinds of things we'd like to look at doing. But so perhaps what you can hear in our kōrero this evening is about the things, the vision and aspirations that we heard from our landowner meeting. They correlate with things that our land use report said we could be looking at and potentially doing some of those things on our whenua. It's not everything. It's not everything we'd like to do. It's just the first 5 years we'd like to start doing those things that have been identified. So that is the first one is looking at is the horticulture. So the first one is horticulture, the second one is pest control, the third one is the native nursery,
Yeah.
and then the fourth one, of course, is kaitiakitanga, and then lastly is this. Those are the things we'd like to focus on in the first 5 years. After that, we imagine that things will expand and evolve. So once we are able to get a platform of successful business started, then we believe we might be able to look at other things, and perhaps that might be things like stock on parts of the block for beef fattening units, those kinds of things. Who knows? We might even be able to look at something like a goat dairy at some time in the future.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different things that we believe potentially could be done on the block. So we hope
some people need that goat milk, don't they? Because
Exactly. Not everybody is. Well, there's a lot of lactose intolerant people who need different kinds of milk. But we hope this evening that we've given you a clear report of our at our AGM and a clear update of where things are. So as shareholders, you know what we're doing, how we get to do that. And we hope we have your support to continue to do that, and that it may be seen as a viable option for some whānau to delay partitioning perhaps, so that we can actually do the work on the whenua to get things started and generated, and whānau can then step in once we've been able to do that and take over these businesses themselves once we've had the return on the investment, to then go and take it and reinvest in other things.
It's a win-win situation.
Well, we think so. We hope that you see that as well. So
it's mainly about getting our whānau all set up and coming back to the whenua, isn't it?
Giving an option, giving an option to whānau, giving an option to whānau to think about. Let's just say you want to partition your land. Of course, most do. What are you going to do when you get your whenua, and how are you going to be able to do that? Yeah. So perhaps these are several options that you might think about and come and have a chat to us about. Nō reira te whānau, it's been a long night for us, and again we hope you are keeping safe and looking after each other and yourselves, and we look forward to being able to come together at a special general meeting in the future when we safely together, but we will leave you with those thoughts, and that is our AGM report for 2020 that we present to you tonight. Pō Mārie.